John's gospel begins a slightly different way. It does not begin with the historical developments, Joseph and Mary and Bethlehem and the visit of the shepherds, things like that. It begins by thinking about the coming of the eternal Son, the coming of God in theological terms. Let me read the first 18 verses, sometimes called John's prologue. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is he of whom I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me." Out of his fullness we have all received grace, in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. Let me run through the thought of this very quickly. First, you cannot help but see that this one who's coming is simply called the Word. In the beginning was the Word. We might say, in the beginning was God's self-expression. In the beginning, God expressed himself. In the beginning was God's self-expression, and this self-expression was with God, God's own fellow. And this self-expression was God, God's own self. And already your heart begins to flutter and your mind wonders, what's going on here? How do you think in those terms? But that's what the text says. This one who becomes flesh, who takes on human identity, is one with God, God's own agent in creation, God's own self. Even the term word is an interesting choice, isn't it? How do you think about Jesus? What title is adequate for him? I can imagine in John's head going round and round various titles and names and expressions that could be used. And he remembers, for example, that in the Old Testament, we read again and again, the word of the Lord came to the prophet saying, so God has disclosed himself in revelation. Or he remembers John 1, God spoke and something came into being. By the word of the Lord, the heavens were made. God's word in creation. Even God's word in saving people, transforming people. God sent forth his word and he healed them, quoting from the Psalms. All these things that God's word accomplishes, he reveals, he creates, he transforms, and he thinks, yes, that's the appropriate expression that summarizes all who Jesus is.